Hello, Sideliners, and welcome back to another episode of Sideline Tea. We're your hosts, Brittany, Jennifer, and Mary, here to spill the tea with the man who needs absolutely no introduction, Travis Wingfield, with special guest, Kona. He's your host of Drive Time with Travis Wingfield, part of the Miami Dolphins Podcast Network. When he's not breaking down film, giving expert analysis, interviewing players and coaches, or enjoying the Eggs Benedict from the training facility, he's also contributing articles exclusively on MiamiDolphins.com. In case you have been living under a rock, you can find Travis on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and, of course, MiamiDolphins.com. So grab your favorite beverage, sit back, relax, and let's spill some tea. Travis, thank you so much for coming and joining us. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. Camp is almost here. I don't know when this comes out, but we are getting ever close and it goes by faster every year. And I get a little more excited every year. So I can't wait to get back at practice and watching these guys do their thing.
We're airing this episode on Saturday, so camp is coming up really, really quick. And I guess that we can just go ahead and dive into some camp questions if you're interested in doing that.
Yeah, of course. I'm always excited to talk about training camp. It's kind of like my time to shine. Like that was kind of where my career took off and it's where I do my most engagement. So training camp is my wheelhouse. It's my Super Bowl every year.
So how did that all come about, like with you coming to the Miami Dolphins to fruition? Did it come from like you going to training camp and you doing that type of stuff? Like how did that all come about?
What's the story?
So it's kind of a long one. I actually, one of my college courses, because I graduated into my late 20s from WSU, and one of my college courses, I prepared this whole PowerPoint of the run up to it because I was kind of getting closer and closer to getting the job. And I told this full story in a PowerPoint presentation one time. So I've told it a few times, but essentially, I don't know if you guys are familiar with this. They used to do a fan site weekend. I think there's still some version of it, but when I was with Locked On, because I was the host of Locked On before Kyle was, and I wrote for the website there, and they produced a daily, blog style website. They would host different websites and you could come down and cover a game. And I did that a couple of times. And the first time I did it, I met Andy Cohen, who wrote, Dolphins Digest. And, he was he was with the organization for 30 or 40 years or something like that. And he had told me, I was this, wide-eyed kid looking to try to make a name for myself in this world. And he told me he was a fan of the stuff he had seen me put out on the podcast and Twitter and stuff. And we just kind of chatted throughout the game. And I left with his contact information and was like, this is what I want to be doing. This is the path that I'm on is pursuing this. And if I don't make the football media, the capital J journalist job work, then I'll have to get a real job. My wife and I had this agreement where I had a certain amount of runway to pursue this. And luckily, Andy Cohen had let me know who Jason Jenkins was and to reach out to him. And that was my first point of contact, just a random email to Jason Jenkins. And if you guys know anything about the late, great Jason Jenkins, it's that he was famous for being up till 2-3 o'clock in the morning, pounding out emails and just getting after it. He was an absolute beast. And he replied to me one night and I hit the floor with actually, you know what, Mary, you'll appreciate this. So when I was in college and I was pursuing this with Locked On, I was substitute teaching also to help pay bills. And I got the email the first day I showed up to a first grade class. And I'm all trying to get my footing here for how I'm going to approach this potential pivot into teaching. If I, that might be where I the pivot I have to take off of football, which would be pretty stark. And I got an email from Jason and my interest in teaching just went out the door immediately. I was done. I was I'm going to work for the Dolphins. This is how it's going to go.
Bye, kids.
And so enjoy the day. You got to find another substitute part 2. And so he wrote back and I spoke to his assistant and they set up a time for me to call. And I'll never forget this. This is one of those moments where I thought I blew it. I had read the email originally, I'll call you. And I'm pacing in my house, waiting for this call to come in. I'm all dressed up, trying to dress for the job you want, even though he can't even see you. And the call never came. And I stressed about it and thought about it and looked back at the email and the wording was a little bit ambivalent. And I was I'm pretty sure I was supposed to call him and I didn't do it.
Oh no.
And I laid on my floor and contemplated my entire life, for 10 minutes, just what are you doing? eventually I got in touch with Jason. I got the job, and it just kind of, well, I should say, and I came down in 2019 to training camp on my own. Like I footed my own bill with Locked On, and that really kind of took off that year. And, it was one of those things where like, this isn't going to happen if you don't really pursue it. So why don't you, book your own ticket and get down there? And I did that, and the content really took off that year. We can talk more about 2019 as we go along, because that was it was a tough year for the organization, but I kind of felt like that was where I established my voice as kind of this, upbeat, positive. Let's look at the good side of the football team. And so that experience really helped kind of accelerate that. And then by the end of, by basically a week before the pandemic happened, I was officially accepted the job for the Dolphins and flew off to Indy before the world shut down for a year.
Wow.
Oh gosh.
Yeah. So it's a long story, but it's a really cool one. Like I obviously, to me, it's cool because I experienced it. But like, kind of like a dream come true situation. And I'll always tell my kids, like, anything you want to do, you can accomplish it.
That's great.
I think everyone can appreciate that kind of story. Just like
you had to bet on yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
There was a moment when I first arrived for the day before training camp. So like we messed up my Airbnb, and I wasn't supposed to be in the room that night. And it's like, it wasn't cleaned. It was disgusting. And the person that was renting the room out to us was like furious that I was there because we just messed up the timing of it. And like, I'm one of those situations again where I'm like, what in the hell am I doing? Like, I'm down here away from my family, like, Seattle to Miami, Florida, like the furthest point of the map. Like,
I was going to ask
go back
where
to
you were
school
from
here soon. Like, what am I doing here? But if you don't take those chances and you don't have those moments, like that's, I feel like every success story has those moments where you question yourself and, but like you said, bet on yourself. And that's what I did. And that's kind of how we got here.
Yeah. So cool. So you went to the training facility, I'm assuming, had your interview and everything. How nervous were you?
So here's another really cool part of that was I never actually had like a formal interview process. So like Jason was just essentially kind of, he had sought me out, and he wanted me as kind of this new, changing landscape of new age media where it's more video platform, and obviously podcasting was my bread and butter. And went out and got the Fish Tank every single Tuesday in season, bi-weekly off season for the guys. Seth and OJ, got to shout out my guys. He had the vision to bring in those guys along with me, and we met at a restaurant right across from the old Davie facility. I had 1 year in Davie, which thank heavens we are in Miami Gardens at the Baptist Health Training Complex, because the upgrade there is significant. So we had breakfast at a place right there. It was after one of the games I covered, and my wife was with me down here, and she was like, well, she must have been like 5 months pregnant at the time. And, she takes me over because we had like the rental car. There's only one car, and comes over with me and stays in the area and does some shopping. And we're like trying to figure out if we're making this massive life change in the midst of having our first child. And, and then he was like, at the end of the thing, he was like, you ready to do this, man? I'm like, I've been ready to do this my whole entire life. Of course I am. So it wasn't really, it was nerves going to that breakfast, but it was never like that. Like, he was just Jason. Like, if you knew Jason, he made you feel, if you just met, or if you have known him for 20 years, like you were the only person in the world that mattered. So like, it was so easy. He made it so easy on me.
Yeah. That's kind of how I feel about Coach McDaniel too. He's like, makes you feel comfortable. He makes you feel like you're important in the moment, like whatever moment, no matter what's going on around him, he'll stop and take those times with you. And I think it's so important to have people like that in the building. And I know Jason definitely did that, but it's nice to now have that in Coach McDaniel,
Yeah, and you can tell with Coach, like, it's important to him to like have your moment with him to be like memorable. Like, he doesn't want to just like brush you off and move on to the next thing. Like, he'll think of that witty quip or that little whatever it might be. Like, he's always got something for everybody. So it's spot on.
That's cool.
So everyone always asks, so I feel like I'm like obligated to ask, but is Mike McDaniel who you see on TV, is that how he is in real life? No cameras, no anything, just you guys?
Yeah, like, I mean, my favorite part of Coach is when he leaves the podium for press conferences and just has that extra little thing to say. Like, he's always got the joke, right? Or when he comes in, like, anticipates Barry's 3-part questions that he likes to make fun of, or, whatever it is. Like, it's I've never seen anything different that make me believe otherwise. Like, I'm not around him all the time, but, I've seen him enough to like say, if he's faking it, he's doing a hell of a job, because I've never seen him be any other version.
Yeah. Oh, I love Coach.
He's the best. He really is.
He's incredible. But there are times with Coach was sometimes I had a conversation with him at the Tua Foundation, and I feel this sometimes when I listen to him during press conferences, where sometimes it'll be like a 20-minute long thing, and I'll get out of listening, and I'm like, what did he just say? Like, I don't even know it. Like, huh? Like, sometimes he says so many big words, and I have to like pause and be like, okay, let's decipher that sentence. But yeah,
I think he's always like thinking 3 steps ahead in his own head, and he's like, oh, I'm onto this thing. Like I've already forgotten about that previous thing we're talking about. I'm on to the next one. Like I kind of sympathize with him because I'm that same way too. Like I'll forget a thing on the honey-do list because I'm already thinking about what's going to happen on, this weekend or whatever. So I sympathize with him on that.
Yeah. I feel like I ramble like he does. So I sympathize like for all of you, empathize.
The thing with his rambling is he uses such great vocabulary. So I'm like, wow, he's such an educated guy.
Yeah.
Like when you listen to him speak, you're like, holy cow.
It's that Yale education.
He just had, that great interview or whatever podcast.
Yeah.
It was really good. It was awesome.
I didn't know that he did podcasts. So are you going to have him on, Travis? You've done stuff. You've done a few things with him, haven't you?
Yeah, when he first got hired, we did one with him and then did one with him and with Chris Greer. And it was so funny to see how quickly him and Chris kind of like just became buddies. Like I love their press conferences now because, Chris will like get into like the serious side and then he'll kind of like veer towards something funny and Coach will like come with a joke and they just kind of like buddy out over it. It's and so I saw that like firsthand pretty quickly on and it was apparent early on. So he did the show those couple of times. He does like the McBreakdown we put on. I think it's like on social and also on the local CBS
Love
channel
those.
here.
It's on like 11. It's on like 11:30. I think like 11:30 every Sunday.
Yeah, I know he does a bunch of stuff. I mean, he's always moving around and media obligations and in between game planning. So he's got a bunch of fun stuff that he does for us.
So when you get to work, tell us how amazing that training facility really is, because we've all seen the pictures. I even like made a TikTok of it of when we were doing like during the free agency when we signed all those new players.
Ooh, this is nice, girl. This audience is you right here. Okay. They don't smell like roaches in here or nothing. Mm-mm. This is so nice. And look at this. Girl, how you get sparkles in the back of an animal? What is this, a Care Bear?
It just, you see the pictures and it just looks like absolutely incredible. So do you just have free roam? Are you allowed to go like wherever you want, or do you have like sets? Oh, don't go in here, or you can access this area, and this area, or how is it? How is it there?
I think you earn a little bit of trust over the course of 5 years. I remember my first year there, I had no access because they had us wearing those little the tracker beeper things for COVID.
Oh,
and
oh my gosh,
the last thing they want is the doofus on the podcast getting around the players and bringing COVID to Ryan Fitzpatrick or whoever it might be. And so like that was challenging because I just was so detached from everything in the building. But ever since then, the move to the new facility, we for instance we taped like a lot of the podcast interviews have come out. The summer was taped on media day, like back in I think it was like the safeties room. So, you make your way down there to the practice field and I get access out there for practice. And we shoot some of those little Instagram reels or Twitter videos to promote the podcast during training camp that are taped out there. There's one of me like throwing a football with the helmet on. So going out there is, I try to like make sure it's never lost on me. Like I'm always trying to, as Tua would say, be where my feet are and just kind of take in like, because when you walk into the lobby, like you go upstairs to go to where like the content area is, the media section, and like you look out over this big pane glass and like Hard Rock Stadium is there, and it's usually a beautiful Miami day. So like just this backdrop with and being where you are, it's hard to like not notice it. It is amazing. It's being there is a dream come true every day, not just because of the building, but like just the people and the organization. It's so much fun to go to work.
That's great.
Yeah. And speaking of that, take us through your work day. Like, what is your day in the life? When you wake up, what is it? What time do you wake up? What do you do when you go to work? Like, what does your day look like?
Yeah. So part of that amazing facility is the food. and I'm sure you guys saw the NFL
what it was
PA
our grade, like
survey.
A+.
Yeah, and like
we were
so
number one.
earned. So earned. Some days they have eggs Benedict and the French toast, and I'm just like, this is the best thing because it's like my two favorite breakfast foods, and sometimes they come out together, and it's just like there can be no wrong on this day. But like, so if you want to call it like my call time, which it's not, just like the first thing I have to be there for, like the first thing that is like it's usually a press conference, but I try to get some some emails and some stuff done in the morning. But like the breakfast is before I'm required to be there technically, but I always make sure to get there for it. So that's like the number one, I get the kids in the car, I drive them to daycare over in West Pines. I go all the way back over to Miami Gardens. It's like an hour long haul. It's all worth it because of that damn breakfast.
What time does breakfast end? Like what time do you have to be there by in order to get breakfast?
It varies. Like in the off season during the spring ball, it was like, I think 9. Yeah, and so you gotta, taking the kids to daycare. It's like, it's early day for you. But so that sets a tempo for the entire day. And then usually there's if we have practice at training camp or the season, we'll have press conferences. Coaches most days, and players go after that and whatnot. And then I'll kind of just pull up, and it's almost like dealer's choice. I don't have, as Office Space would say, I don't have TPS reports to fill out. It's mostly like, what do I want to talk about? What's going on with the team? And so much of the work that I do happens, really around the clock, like segment ideas. I'm sure, Brittany, you're putting this together, setting out the rundown, in the middle of the night, like the idea machine never stops. And so whether I'm like watching games or tape late at night, like there's always something kicking around there to put out to work the next day. And so I'll kind of sit down and organize those thoughts, put together an outline for a show, determine the best way to promote the show, social strategy, and what's going to come down the pike for future content. Who can I talk to in the locker room that day that might provide, content down the road? Like a good example is I had a River Craycraft, which go Cougs all the time. He went to Washington State. I went to Washington State. That's a theme on my podcast. Every time I talk about a Cougar, it's go Cougs. So River Craycraft is we kind of bonded over that, shared alma mater. And I did a podcast with him where I talked to him at his locker about Ryan Helinski, who was a Cougars quarterback who unfortunately after his playing career took his own life. And my cause, my cleats was for Helinski's hope. And we really bonded over that. And so like thinking about, that's coming up. I know he has this foundation. It's important to me. It's important to him. Let's get that planned out and discuss that for week 14 when it comes out. So like lots of, the biggest thing I've learned is like really planning ahead, because you never know when you're going to get access to certain things. So just trying to be very, fluid, forward thinking about I mean, Mary, I'm sure you teaching, you've got to have a year-long game plan, right? Like you roll out the whole game plan in August, I'm sure.
You roll out the game plan, and then life happens, and the game plan is always changing.
Everybody has a game plan until they get punched in the face, right?
Oh yeah.
So we do, and then get that stuff together, and then like my break is this is where I'm going to get a lot of Dolphins fans jealous. My break, like my coffee break, I'll go out and get which by the way, elite cold brew downstairs. Also, like everything you want is there. It's outrageous. I cannot look at the smile on my face. It's so just great to be there with all the amenities we get. Like Javon Holland talked about the banana pancakes on Twitter the other day, or whatever it was. Like there's just so many. So many great things available to us. So I'll go get my cold brew and go over there and just watch practice and just watch football for a little bit. And, everyone's
what a dream.
Everyone's taking their attendance notes. I'm just like, oh, it's a cool running scheme over there. Cause I'm not my job is different. I don't have to report on who's there and who's not. So I can just kind of take it in and just watch football. So it's my favorite part of the day is that. And then, go back, eat lunch, bump into, rub elbows with the guys, the coaches, talk some shop, whatever, maybe just have some cooler talk, and then go back up and get the podcast ready, record it, go to the locker room, talk to the players, and get the promotions for social and whatnot ready, and call it a day. So it's kind of like rinse repeat, but how could you ever get bored of that?
Right.
And I mean, getting A+ from people who are at A+ facilities all the time, says something, right? Not talking about rookies and young guys, but vets who on their off time are going to A+ facilities.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? People that can go to the best places at any time. Those are the grades that they're getting for work. Says a ton. That's wow. That is a really big vote of confidence. So yeah, we're jealous.
Yeah, we're super jealous over
And
here.
I get my breakfast at a vending machine.
Does it compete with airport cuisine though? Which is, I guess, maybe
no,
put a pin in that one.
No, not even close. Not even close. No, does not. I sent like a picture the other day. I was like, well, there's like sausage and peppers. They're like, you cannot eat that. You cannot eat sausage and peppers
from a vending machine.
Well, it's not a vent. It's like a cooler, it's like, 3 coolers of stuff. So drinks, but then there's food, and, they come in like a company prepares it like at a gas station, but it's
gas station sushi.
Yeah, exactly. But so they have breakfast, a few sandwiches, little salads. And one day I was like, oh, sausage and peppers. And my friends were like, you absolutely cannot eat that.
Did they say what happens if you eat the sausage and peppers?
No, but later on I went and it was gone. So I don't know. Somebody dared to be great.
Somebody tried it out.
Oh, yeah.
I think probably the coolest thing though too, Travis, is like when during like season or something and like you see a play or something, you don't know what it is, or you want to know why that player did this. Are you like, you have access that you can just kind of go up to them and say, hey, like, can you explain this play or something? Are they open to that? Or it's kind of like, don't bother me. Like, how is that?
Yeah. So I try to be as careful with players' time as I possibly can. And I try for the most part to avoid talking football with them when it's like in the cafeteria, because, everyone's there. Like you can, turn around and you can find an offensive lineman you want. Like everyone's in that room at that time for the most part. So, but like there are some guys so I'm sure you see Teron Armstead, like he puts out a lot of like content with teaching offensive line play and stuff. So like if I have a question, like I'll never forget the Cowboys game last year on the screen to Tyreek that got the 3rd down conversion that allowed us to chew up more clock and then eventually kick that game-winning field goal. He had a really big block on Micah Parsons that took him out, or maybe it was DeMarcus Lawrence. It was one of their star pass rushers that took him out of the play. And I was like, man, did you plan that ahead of the snap? And like, he told me like, yeah, I did, this and that and the other. And it's just like little things like that I try to like, if, I feel like I would be a fool to not try to absorb some knowledge being around these guys, because it's, I'm not reporting on it. I'm not telling it to the masses, but I can use it in how I see the game and how I analyze things.
Absolutely.
So
I will take that into account. Or like, Bradley Chubb, for instance. I don't know if you guys have ever seen this clip of Bradley Chubb, but after showing him that, like if I just ask him a quick question about, something about his pass rush, he'll like tell me. So, but I try to be very like, quick and like, hey, I just real quick, and this is off the record, like just for my own personal knowledge. But for the most part, it's, asking about like, how are the kids? Like how's the golf game? A lot of golf talk around the building. But I try my best, but like, at the end of the day, I'm a diehard like football fan and total football geek who, kind of made my path in this industry by like obsessing over the X's and O's and the deep dive of the game. Like, I can't help myself. Like I'm just so dying to know certain little things. And like I said, just for my own, like, that's cool. I know that now. Like I don't even have to report on it. So I try my best not to, but it does happen sometimes.
We all know that Christian Wilkins, he was not a big media fan person. Was he kind of cool with you though? Because you were like in the building. Did he give you a hard time?
No, Christian's, I mean, the nicest person imaginable. He's great. He was so, this is what I'll say about like, and this is most great players for the most part. Like Jaylen Ramsey's this way too. Like they are so singularly focused on like being great. Jaylen Ramsey. Jaylen Ramsey's this way too. Like they are so singularly focused on like being great that they like, that's kind of where their mind is, tracked at all times. And so, I just, what's up, Christian? Hey, what's up, man? How you doing? Like it was, cause he was always like going places and trying to just like, get to his next meeting or whatever. So, there's not a person that like I'm not cordial with, but like there's certain guys that you can talk to and that it's more just what's up, how you doing? Like, move on. But no, he was never, mean to me or whatever. He's just always joking. He's always a fun guy trying to have a good time.
Yeah.
See? I knew it.
I feel like it's going to be so sad without him. Oh,
he's I mean, what can you say? He's a big loss, but I mean, that's how this league is set up and the sport goes is, you get a finite amount of resources and you got to build the best team with those resources. And Sometimes.
So you guys were freshmen together.
Yeah.
We were, yeah. Or no, he was 2019, so he was the year before me.
Yeah. Oh, I thought. Oh, you were interviewing during.
Yeah, 2020 was my first year with the team.
Okay.
2019 was my first year, like down there for camp and stuff.
Gotcha.
So you see it. You see the change when players come and players go, and you see them when they come in as new guys. How is that when they're, meeting their new team and meshing together? Is it an automatic, like the guys are like, "What's up, man? Like, welcome to the team," or do you see some sort of? Is it like that awkward phase where you're getting to know the new guy? What is that? What's the vibe every year when because the team changes every single year, and you got to get to know the new players and vibes change. So what's that like at the start of each season?
Yeah, I'm sure there's some of that, right? I mean, like first day of school vibe. You know how this goes. Like, you be a little nervous. I'm sure for you getting to meet new students too. It's like, I don't know anybody yet. I don't know how I can, how I teach certain kids or how I, interact with certain, like every kid requires different attention. So like, I'm sure there's a little bit of that nerves that goes on, but I think they do a great job of number one, like, so we have like player engagement staff, which does a good job of like getting the guys together for things. So like they'll organize like, team Top Golf for the rookies. And so they'll have something that will kind of tether them together in that way. Right. And then also the way the league is now, because you mentioned like the turnover. I mean, I've seen complaints about like 1-year contracts, like, buddy, that's the league now. Like that's how it is. Like a lot of guys are on 1-year deals, and that's how free agency often plays out. So there's massive turnover every single year on every NFL roster. And that's why losing at the end of the year sucks so bad, because that group will never be together ever again. Like it's a special year every single year for every team in the NFL. So because of that, I think that, and guys have the same agents, and guys have the same trainers, and guys have all these different people that help them, in their careers that are working together. And so everyone kind of like at least has some baseline of knowing some of the guys, I think. So I think it's easier in that regard. But yeah, I think that's probably changed over, if you ask, my co-host OJ McDuffie how it was, I'm sure it was a little tougher for a rookie back in the 90s to break into such a hard-nosed like mentality. But yeah, nowadays I think most of these guys are familiar with each other for the most part.
And when you have a head coach like McDaniel that brings that warmth and makes everybody feel some type of way, I feel like it's almost easier than if you had maybe a Bill Belichick as your head coach that's maybe a little rough around the edges. I think Mike sets the tone for his locker room, which is cool to see.
Yeah, a disarming personality is critical, right? Like if it's the podcast, right? That the whole idea is to try to, make someone feel like they can be open and honest with you. And if you can do that, then it's the relationship kind of takes off from there.
How are the vibes that like McDaniel, like after you guys, there's a win or there's a loss, how does Mike McDaniel like control those vibes? How are the vibes in the building after a win and after a loss?
Yeah, one of my favorite things is like, not my favorite things, but like after a loss, for instance, is you'll hear like the same routine, like the music that's coming out of. No, definitely not my favorite thing at all. It's like they'll crank the music to like till 11 in the meeting room, and like it's everyone's back on track, getting ready for the next game. But I mean, losing wears on everybody, and I wear it. I feel like I wear it as hard as anybody, which I know that the players obviously care, far more than any fan ever would. But I like as the lunatic fan being there and being so attached, like. It wears on me for sure. And, my desire for the team's success has only multiplied since like developing all these relationships with players. But my favorite part about Coach is his zeal for that positivity and staying upbeat. I think the alternative is, if you're going to go around being miserable all day, then I think that, personally, my best work comes from a positive headspace and, a good headspace. So, after big losses, if you listen to the podcast, you can tell like the intro is not quite as fun. I'm not quite as yelling into the microphone as I am after big wins.
I mean, what is up? What is up? What is up? What is up, Dolph fans? And welcome to the Drive Time Podcast, part of the Miami Dolphins Podcast Network, covering your team, your Miami Dolphins. How's it going, everybody? I am your host, Travis Wingfield, and if you can't tell, I'm awfully fired up today. That's what 70, count them, 70 points will do for you. The Dolphins roll at home in the opener over the Denver Broncos. 70-20 is your final. What is up, Dolph fans, and welcome to the Drive Time Podcast, part of the Miami Dolphins Podcast Network, covering your team, your Miami Dolphins. I don't got to ask you how it's going today. I know how it's going. Dolphins fall 28-27 to the Titans. On Monday Night Football, a late collapse in the fourth quarter gives the Titans 15 points in the final 3 minutes of the game to claim victory. We'll talk about it.
So those are tough to avoid, but throughout the season, like week to week, the vibes they're really stable, and that's a good place to work, in my opinion.
Stability is key.
And coach does a great job of balancing that. He's got such a good feel. Like you talked about the Dan Le Batard podcast. He just has such a good feel for like the psychology of his players and the mood of the group. He's got his finger on the pulse that way.
And that's the new wave. That's what the players, how they are. That's just the new wave of coaching. And Joe Rose was talking about it, how the players are different now. They're not that they're not tough, but they were raised differently than our parents were raised and our grandparents were raised. So
I have this conversation with Seth and OJ all the time because OJ drafted in the 90s, Seth worked there in the 90s, and it was a different world, right? The whole world's different now, and for the better. Like progress is great. But like we have the debate all the time, and OJ is like, if he wants toughness. I don't blame him because like OJ made a career, and he's OJ McDuffie because he's tough. So I get that, and these guys are football's I laugh at the notion these guys aren't tough like human beings. Like, are you kidding me? But it is a different environment, and I'm all for it. I think the change is the progress is good, and we should continue to progress. That's how I see it.
He did too with Le Batard, right? Like he did the recent one where it was really personal with McDaniel, which I thought was freaking amazing. Where he's just like, "You were the best listener I've ever heard in my life." Like it was so, I don't know. You really like, I felt like you understood him so much versus like there was one when he first got there that was much more, how are you as a coach? Like, what are you bringing into here? What's the vibes in the building? How are you getting this out of, players? I just thought I was mesmerized by the last one where he being so, I don't know if you're speaking about being tough versus, connecting with people in a different way. Like that's exactly what it was. Super vulnerable. And I felt like, you don't get that from everybody, man. And I think that engenders an environment of like, I don't know, of why a team gets so close and plays like the way they would play for each other.
Yeah.
And I feel like you could totally see like how they mesh. Like you could see that the players love each other, and that stems from the top. And it's a cool thing to see as fans when your team likes each other. That's all you want. Yeah. Your team to get along.
It's funny how every position group has like there's like a buddy cop opportunity in every position group, right? Like Raheem and Alec could have like their own buddy cop show. Like, obviously Zach and Christian last year, the line, JP and B Chubb, like there's all those guys they're all just like good dudes and they all get along together. So yeah, and they make, like I said, they make work on everybody else in the building easier because they're like that.
When you were talking about the press conferences with Greer and McDaniel, that's exactly what I was going to say. Like it was like good cop, bad cop, or like buddy cop vibes. Totally.
Yeah, they're such a perfect fit together. It's hilarious because McDaniel like kills it in the spotlight, and Chris wants nothing to do with it. It's just a perfect pairing. It's hilarious.
Oh yeah. One of my favorite things I ever saw was when the team was in Germany, and he did that. What was it that he was talking about? Because I only saw like Rich Eisen and Dan Orlovsky. They were talking about, they sat down with him and they almost like left in tears about when Coach Mike was talking about Tua and was like, what happens if like somebody just gave him a chance and believed in him? And that is just like, you got to think about that when you see things on like Twitter or you read articles like, oh, he needs to be harder and he needs to be stronger. Well, that doesn't work for everybody, and that's exactly what Coach McDaniel said when he was in Germany. Like, what happens if there was just somebody who actually believed in Tua and gave him a chance? And I just think that type of mentality and mindset is very much needed, especially in like this generation.
And you know what happens if you try to be the tough guy when you're not the tough guy is I forget which episode it is, and they're going to kill me for shouting them out and not knowing the episode, but there's an episode of the Fish Tank with Seth and Juice where they talk to someone. I forget who it is. Anyway, it was about the Cam Cameron season. And like there was a pivotal moment where they were like, this dude, he's trying to manufacture that tough guy. And like they're like, this ain't the dude. Like they knew right away, because in an NFL locker room, in an NFL setting, if you are inauthentic, it gets picked out like that. Like it is so obvious when you're not being yourself, because how can you maintain like a consistent act when you go through like every season? We know this as Dolphins fans. Like every team has this. There's so many ups and downs and highs and lows and problems to solve and new things that you didn't foresee coming. Like it is just a crazy 4 months of your life, especially when you're that attached to it, and 80 hours, 100-hour weeks into this thing. And so if you're inauthentic, like those are going to slip right through the cracks. It is impossible to be anything but your genuine self. And if he's going to teach, and have success through positivity and reinforcement, then that's how he should fail too.
Exactly. Yeah. So speaking of teaching, training camp, how excited are you, Travis? Very much.
So we're taping this early in the week. Just for a little break the fourth wall. I have a lot of golf planned for the next week, so I'm not wishing that away just yet. Like I took PTO this week. We're playing golf. Had a great round today.
I saw that. I saw your feet. Golf clap.
I shot at 80 today, which is
80?
very, very good for me. Yeah.
That's really good.
Thank you. So I'm stoked for training camp. I can't wait for it, but I'm not wishing this week away just yet.
Yeah, you want to savor it. So who are you most excited to see in training camp, though? You want to wait for it, but we're going to talk about it.
So I talk about this in the podcast. I always work my hardest to not do this. And I kind of like it when Tua has like a day off, which has only happened once. It was this past OTA. He missed one day of practice to be at an event that he had planned. And I did a good job of taking my eyes off the quarterback that day. But when Tua was there, like, compared to what I've seen in Dolphins training camps for 5 years, 6 years, is like you can see high level quarterback play and appreciate it so much when you haven't had it. So like, and this is no knock on anybody, other players, but like Tua is, and he shines in that environment too, because he's seeing it, he's ripping it, it's on time, it's pretty, the guys are coming out of breaks and the ball's on him. So I love watching Tua play practice because he's incredible on the practice field. It's so much fun to watch. And what I'm most excited about with him this year is, and go back to the OTA podcast, he's better in every way. And that's what he does every single off season. He comes back, he's in better shape this year. He thinks that the jujitsu and the way he's kind of worked to, contort his body in the pocket against pressure and all that stuff can help him stay healthy, opposed to the extra weight, which will allow him to be a little more fleet of foot. The quarterback coach stuff that he worked on, like there was significantly more pop and easy gas, which is the part that I'm most excited about. Like it looks like he can kind of just get to that fastball a little bit easier and quicker than he did in the past. So Tua's ability every single year of his career, and you've seen the tweets, like they told him he couldn't do this. He came out and did it. Like he's going to get better. So I always look forward to watching him come back.
He is truly the epitome of the quote, work hard in silence, let success be your noise, because he just gets after it. Everybody's like, where's Tua? He's like, nobody knows what he's doing, but he's doing whatever he needs to do, and he's working hard. And when I hear that quote, I think of him because he does his thing. He works his butt off in silence. He's not out here like putting it out for the world to see. He's just doing his thing, and he comes back better each year, which is really awesome.
Yeah,
it's so strange to me that he's not this just universally beloved figure because of that, because of how great of a human being he is. Like I know I'm super close to it, and maybe I've kind of lost touch to like the outside perspective, but I don't understand why he's not like just
the most loved.
Favorite. Yeah, it kind of blows my mind just knowing who he is, and then of course the product we see on the field. Like it's, I don't know, it looks like a superstar to me, but what the hell do I know?
I tried to figure it out, and the only thing I can figure it out, because he's such an amazing human. Even if you don't like what he does on the field, you can't argue about what he does off the field. He's just an incredible human. The only thing I can come up with is people would rather continue to bury their own graves deeper and deeper than to admit, I was wrong a couple years ago about this guy. That's my only logical thing I can come up with.
Yeah, it tracks. Among other things, I think that tracks. I just, it's unfortunate. I mean, I think all it takes is one breakthrough, late in the season, which we haven't had that. And that's and McDaniel said that too on the Le Batard podcast. He mentioned like that's going to be your criticism until you overcome it. And a lot of great players, a lot of great teams have gone through the gauntlet before they had their breakthrough. So it's, nothing's guaranteed, but all it takes is 1 year. And I hope that'll do the trick, but we'll see. You never know.
Yeah. And we have Patrick Mahomes, who kind of warped our idea of this instant success, instant gratification. So everyone assumes oh, you have to do it now. And if you don't do it now, goodbye. There's no longer this let a team and player, let them develop and let's work there. Let's continue to get better every single year. It's, oh, he didn't do it last year. Bye. And it's this instant gratification that we've come with. And Patrick Mahomes, I think, really kind of warped everyone's idea of how soon a team should be successful and can be successful.
And it happens once a generation, right? Because go back to the Manning and Brady rivalry, which I grew up in the throes of that thing. So that's my golden years of football is watching those two guys every single playoffs. And who always won those games? It was Brady, but Manning was the more accomplished, regular season and MVP and statistic quarterback, but Brady was the guy that won. And so Manning carried this badge of he can't win. Look at Lamar Jackson now. He has this badge of he can't win in the playoffs, even though he's one of the best 5 or 6 quarterbacks in the damn league. I don't understand these standards because go back before that, the next one in that line of generational quarterbacks like Mahomes, Brady, Manning, it was Dan Marino. And I know Dolphins fans don't want to hear this, but he didn't have the postseason success that everyone would have hoped that he wanted to have. And, so I just, the standards are crazy. They're out. I just wish we could appreciate really good football when we get it, because it's awesome. It's fun to root for. And hey, if they're not the team holding the trophy at the end of the year, go play with your kids. There's other things to do, to get excited about in
life.
Man, we got off track there. Wow.
That was only one team does at the end.
This is what happens.
I forgot what the initial question was.
We're talking training camp. Training camp.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
But you know what's so dope? The first Tyreek training camp when everyone was I'm gonna talk this shit right now. When everyone's he's going to ruin his career. It's gonna be terrible.
That was the one.
You're ruining your life. What are you doing? Well, at least you're getting paid. We got you. And he was well, actually, no. And that training camp, when our Twitter people were not that they would ever sneak videos or anything of training camp and live stream them to us or anything, because they wouldn't. They would never do that.
My favorite is when they're recording their video, and on the video is the sign that says, "Please no recording."
Honestly, to me. Travis, I'm not even kidding you. A ton of it, they were literally just talking us through it. We weren't seeing the video. We'd be in a space and they would just be talking us through it. It's the dudes who went to training camp and we're all at work. No, we weren't. But yeah, we were.
Yeah.
And we're listening to them. No, and I'm not kidding you, for hours and hours. But occasionally there'd be a glimpse of one, or then finally you guys would put it out. And we saw what they were screaming about and telling us about. And we were no effing way. And of course, I'm up here in New England going no one believes me. Right. And then that 22 season, the first few games and before those concussions, it was exactly what they described to us. And we listened and hoped for, then saw via you guys, and then saw it. It was really cool. So I understand why training camp is probably Christmas, this is what we're getting.
I've never seen a player, an athlete Tyreek in that 2022 training camp. Cause last year he was on more of a pitch count, but and they say this, I think coaches will tell you, not that they needed to learn how to practice football. They knew what they were doing, but Tyreek kind of taught them what a different standard is of how to practice every single day. And to Jen's point, he was running gassers, he was running these fly routes and catching them, and the crowd's going nuts. So my son is 1.5 years old, and I by accident found out that he loves monster trucks and dirt bikes and stuff, which little boy doesn't. But it was on. We were at a restaurant and it was on. And he kept on being he was getting excited about it. I'm okay. So now we watch monster trucks all the time. And every time I watch the Monster Jam highlights, there's always guys in the crowd being oh, yeah! They're cheering about these trucks going through the air. That was me in that training camp. I'm high-fiving beat writers next to me and stuff. This is awesome. Because if you love football, that's that's like the genesis of why I'm in this position, because I love football, and I don't know how you can love football and watch that and not be like, that was awesome. And that's what Tyreek did that whole training camp, and they did it last year too. He was on a little bit more of a pitch count last year in terms of just his overall workload, which clearly he doesn't have to, go be full throttle on August 1st. But
and we just didn't
so much fun to watch.
And we kind of knew last year, 2022 is like unwrapping a gift, and we're listening to a dude describe it. And then, then we see the plays. It was awesome.
I think I have the video on my Twitter, if you go back and search, of him like hyping the crowd up that first day when fans were back in the stands in 2022 and like hitting the backflip. Like, I forget how many people that those stands hold, but it was like you were at a game. It was so great.
Everyone, I know y'all feeling the same way I'm feeling right now. Can I get a whole yeah? Can I get a whole yeah? Let's go, man. Thank you guys so much for coming out. It's going to be fun. It's going to be electric. Plays made on both sides of the ball, man. So, guys, make sure you bring your energy, because we need y'all, man. This sun ain't no joke, man. Get your popcorn ready, man.
And then it happened. So I get it. Yeah. Like, I totally get it.
I think like in 2022, every single game for, I don't even know how long, me and my boyfriend, we would like jump off the couch and just scream, worth every penny. Like that was like our thing that we said like all the time.
Every pick too, right? Like, you can't, the production, like the ripple effect he has. Yeah. It's been one, I mean, it's gotta be one of the best trades in franchise history. If not by far the best.
I have a love for Jaylen Ramsey. And the whole reason I'm actually even on Dolphins Twitter is because of Jaylen Ramsey. So I'm curious when I know love him so much. Like I literally I thank him for like, he's the one who got me into football back in his FSU days, followed him throughout his whole NFL career. Rumors came that we were getting him. I was like, no way, this isn't happening. And then we got him. And I was like the girl who dropped down to the ground and was like crying. I couldn't believe it. So love Jaylen Ramsey.
And he's another one of those guys that's so just locked in on what he's trying to do. Like he studies and he wants to be part of the game plan and like discussions with coaches. So he's so locked in. Like he's a really good example of like how you prepare. And obviously when you prepare like, an elite player and you have, number 5 overall pick physical skills, it's usually you get, a Hall of Fame level career that he's on. So it's so cool to have these conversations, because you guys know for years, the Dolphins were bereft of these like star, NFL spotlight players. And now everywhere you turn, we have a guy that's like that. So it's so cool to talk about this team, in 2024.
Yeah. Jaylen Ramsey actually, the work that he put in to get back was just his progress. But he actually invited my husband and I to his suite for the Raiders game. And he reached out and he just said the kindest things. And we hung out with him afterwards. And it was a game that he got 2 interceptions. And let me tell you, that box was on fire. His brother was there. His kids were there. Yeah. But he is just like, he is a good human being. And I feel like the Dolphins have a lot of players that at the end of the day, that off the field, they're good humans, and it's refreshing to see that on the field. But yeah, he's a really cool guy.
Yeah, I mean, and he remember how gung ho he was about Miami. I think he even said on Twitter when he got traded, like it was Miami or staying put. Like I didn't want to go anywhere else. I was only going to like waive my no trade clause, or it was something to that effect. Like he only wanted to be in Miami. And like to your point about the good people, like you see it like happen every day with like kitchen staff. Like they're just like, they say please and thank you. Like it's just so, like you said, Mary, like refreshing to know that like these people who don't have, it's the old saying, right? Like how you treat the little people is a good example of your character. And these guys don't have to do any of that, and they do because it's who they are.
I could talk like all night for Jaylen Ramsey, but we can't do that.
Pivot for you.
We have like 6 hours of me talking about Christian. That's never made it anywhere. But if you can save it for me, just like
So Travis, do you think that we're going to be fixing our O-line? How do you think, with what we have right now, are we going to be seeing improvements in our O-line? How do you feel about our O-line?
I think it's another one of those situations where, like, let it play out and kind of see what you get at the end of the year or at the end of training camp and into the season. Because, like, last year's front five and starting five to open things up was pretty damn good, right? And I remember the same conversation revolving around like when Tehran went down in Houston and like seeing that whole thing play out in the preseason, and like the Twitter comments about like, oh no, the season's over. It's like, just, they got a plan, like they got this. And McDaniel said that day, like, if the guy behind him wasn't the guy we didn't think could play left tackle on the roster, he wouldn't be here. So I think what they've done is kind of really attack their depth, because our freaking luck the last couple of years in injury attrition, especially on the offensive line, has been insane. Like nobody's been, I think it was the more line combinations than anybody else in the NFL last year. And so I think that,
13.
Going out and getting Patrick Paul and Kendall Lamb is still there as a great swing tackle who was very, very valuable last year. And Austin Jackson had his breakout year. Like, they're deep at tackle. They're very deep in that position. And Patrick Paul's a guy that you can bring on maybe if you want to, run some heavy personnel and 6 offensive linemen and go be a big tight end. And okay, good luck, 230-pound linebacker. Here comes 335-pound Patrick Paul at you. So I love the tackle position. I think Aaron Brewer is you couldn't draw up a better scheme fit if you were to like create a player on Madden for what this offense wants to do. He is incredibly fast and quick. And the guard positions where you like, okay, what's the plan going to be there? Because we do, like,
very nervous.
You can't point to like exactly who it might be right now. And the team, maybe they do have, their depth chart ready and they're like, no, we got this. So sorry about that. I just got a text that we can edit that. Oh no, it's just I got
a text like Omar.
Did somebody get a contract? Is there a contract that is being announced?